back. This is Kirti, clinical psychologist, certified ABA therapist and HOD of psychology department at Daffodils CDC, Hyderabad. So today let us see another important topic, and again this is a very important question which is being asked frequently from our parents. So the question or a problem is like, my child always put hands on the ears and closes his ears, and he might sometimes do some sound, or he just closes ears, move here and there. So this is a frequent concern which is raised by our parents, and when they close their ears and just move around, so what they often find is they just see the children lost in their own world. They don't tend to look at them, they don't tend to respond, they don't give any kind of eye contact. So these are some questions or problems they raise with us. So today let us see how we can be able to reduce this child closing ears, and let us understand first why this happens and in what kind of a children you'll find this. So first let us see the causes or the reasons for it. So the children closing their ears usually we find in the children with autism, that autism spectrum disorder, or a sensory processing difficulties. So what is the reasons? Here the reasons we can be pinpointing in three ways. The first reason we can say is sensory overload. The child would be overloaded with the auditory senses. That could be a normal sound for other individuals or for other kids, but the same sound, same frequency could be disturbing to the child with autism or the child having with the sensory processing difficulties. And the second one is hypersensitivity. So some children would be very heightened with this sensitivity and with this kind of a sounds. That could be a very small sound, or that could be a very huge sound. They can be overwhelming, or they can be like frightened. And again, they just, in order to do the self-soothing, they just close their ears. And the third reason is a fear and anxiety. Children, when they go into other environments where they kind of get overwhelmed with the sensory input they get, a kind of a fear or anxiety comes to them. So automatically, to reduce that, they kind of again do a self mechanism, that is what this closing of ears. So these are the three major reasons why the children closes their ears, especially the children with autism spectrum disorder. Common examples which you see in day to day, like the children closing ears. See, for example, if you keenly observe when you take children to a party, birthday party or a family gathering, there you can observe all of a sudden children gets overwhelmed and just close their ears, and they might do little sounds, or they just move around with this closing ears and moving around. That means that the environment which was the surrounding which is there, it is creating a kind of overwhelming. Could be the auditory sounds, especially the auditory sounds is very high to the children. It could be, again as I said, normal to the typical children. So other example where you can notice is when you take them to shopping malls where a lot of crowd would be and noises would be, and I'm not saying heavy noises, not a heavy decibel noises, but normal noises in which still the child feels little frustrated and angry and just closes the ears. And also you can see in the classrooms for the students who are going to the school, you can find them with normal peer talking also. They just find it overwhelming and they can't tolerate that little noises, and they just close their ears and zone out and go into their own world. So these are little typical examples or common examples you would see in day out with the children closing their ears. So now let's see what is the remedial strategies again we can do using the ABA along with the focus on the sensory integration. So again, ABA is very helpful in understanding the behavior and the interventions being provided, which is being followed systematically and consistently, will definitely give the results of, especially in this behavior also, where in reducing or making the child to reduce to close their ears. So first foremost strategy we can do is desensitization. Systemic desensitization, or we can also say, when we compare with the sensory integration as well, it is an auditory desensitization. That means when a child is overwhelmed with a particular noise or a particular frequency of sound which you get through analysis and get through the data, so what you can do is you can expose the child to that sound slowly in the sense, first start off with a low intensity volume and then slowly you can raise the intensity as the child gets exposed to that sound, and you're slowly desensitizing the child. So immediately when you start doing the desensitization, the next one, which is always my favorite, is a positive reinforcement. So this technique, when a child is trying to expose and not trying to close his ears, that is when you have to provide a praise, a reward or a candy. It could be any reinforcer for the child. And the third important, as always in any reduction of a problematic behavior, is teaching the communication skill. See, when a child is being taken to outside environment, so the child is being exposed. There could be noises which are overwhelming to the child. So in that place, if you teach a child like to help, break or let's go, such simple things, then the child can try to communicate instead of closing the ears. And the next important technique is using a visual cues or a auditory cues. That means, especially when you're taking a child to another outside environment, try to maintain a noise cancellation headphone or an earplugs within the bag of the children and try to use them. So teach them, like whenever they feel that overwhelming, instead of closing ears and just moving around, which is not a socially appropriate behavior, the child can remove that headphones, noise cancellation and just put it in, or a earplugs. So initially you have to actually map that behavior. I mean, you have to teach the child whenever such overwhelming noise or environment is there, you immediately have to place it first through prompt and then let the child do it independently. And the next foremost thing which you can do is modification of the environment. When you are able to understand, yes, the child is going into it, just try to modify. If it is your known environment, try to modify, provide a quiet spaces, and if possible also start doing deep pressure and proprioceptive input. That means try to give a pressuring to the child or weighted blankets. All these different inputs will help the child to regulate the sensory system. When the sensory system is regulated, in that the auditory, that is the sounds also, the child can be able to control. So instead of self-soothing behavior of closing ears and doing that sounds, the child will be able to control themselves without putting that hands on the ears. So, and the last one and very important thing is visual cues or social stories. You can teach the children, instead of closing ears and going, give a social story where such situation happens, and you can teach the children, use a proper appropriate alternative. That could be a communication skill, that is a simple help, or could be a simple sensory input, could be a noise cancellation headphone or a earplug. So this all you can teach them in a social story or a visual cue cards, where you can teach them, just hand over that visual cue card to us where we can help you out. So this is something else you can teach the child, and this technique would be little older kids who can able to understand the commands and follow the stories. So these are few strategies which you can try, and as I always suggest, please seek professional support who can help you and guide you in a much better way in how to handle these behaviors. So by effectively using this ABA strategies and a sensory integration with a collaboration, you can support the child to reduce the problematic behavior of child closing their ears. So if still you have any more doubts or concerns and you want to know any more about the child's development and psychology, please feel free to contact us at Daffodils CTC, Hyderabad. Thank you.